Parents, welcome back to one of the busiest times of the year, back to school, but you can make it a whole lot easier with Uber Eats. Right now, you can get up to 40% off back-to-school essentials. Everything from notebooks, colored pencils, calculators, and glue sticks to lunchbox favorites like string cheese, juice boxes, fresh fruit, and Lunchables. No need to juggle one more errand. Just open the Uber Eats app and get everything you need delivered fast. That's school supply shopping simplified. Offer ends September 16th. Terms apply. See app for details. Order now on Uber Eats.
Wayfair's Labor Day clearance is here. Right now, score up to 70% off everything home, plus fast shipping on everything right to your door. Shop now through September 2nd at wayfair.com.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
The amazing Kate Casey.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey. Today's episode, I am joined by Olivia, Crist, and Lauren Andrade. They are the executive producers of Ruby and Jodi, A Cult of Sin and Influence. This is a 4-part investigation discovery docuseries that examines the shocking downfall of 2 women who once held enormous influence within the Mormon community and on social media. Ruby Franke rose to prominence as the creator of the hugely popular YouTube channel 8 Passengers, which amassed millions of followers by showcasing her life as a strict, faith-driven mother of 6. But behind the wholesome family content were troubling signs of extreme parenting practices and emotional control. Over the course of at least 2 years, I've done several episodes about Ruby Franke. Well, her collaborator, Jodi Hildebrandt, was a licensed therapist and the founder of the ConneXions program, marketed as a path to emotional healing and moral accountability. But in reality, her methods were criticized as authoritarian, isolating, and psychologically damaging. Together, Franke and Hildebrandt formed a partnership that spiraled into criminal behavior. In August 2023, Franke's 12-year-old son escaped from Hildebrandt's home, emaciated, with duct tape around his wrists and ankles, leading police to uncover evidence of severe child abuse. Both women were arrested and later pled guilty to multiple counts of aggravated child abuse for subjecting Franke's children to starvation, physical restraints, and emotional torment. The case horrified the public, raising questions about the online influence, the dangers of unchecked authority figures, and how 2 women once trusted as guides for families could orchestrate such cruelty. Ruby and Jodi, A Cult of Sin and Influence, offers unprecedented insight into the motivations and disturbing relationship between the 2 women. It delves into Hildebrandt and Franke's relationship from both women's respective rise to power and extensive influence within the Mormon community to their eventual arrest in 2023. The docuseries charts the magnetic connection between the 2 and how the melding of Ruby Franke's strict family values with Jodi Hildebrandt's controversial beliefs created a microcosm of control, manipulation, and brutality that led to the devastating emotional and physical abuse of the Franke children. Offering additional and exclusive insight from Hildebrandt's niece, Jessie Hildebrandt, the series underscores Hildebrandt's manipulative and dangerous tendencies, and how when combined with Ruby Franke's strict family values, again, they created this environment that was rife with manipulation, control, and abuse. So it's combined with extensive archival and police footage, as well as commentary from local journalists who covered the case, but also influential Mormon and ex-Mormon voices. This is a story about a doomed partnership and dangerous, disturbing results of unchecked influence. And then, of course, the physical and psychological impact of abusive actions on victims, especially children. Here's my interview. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I am so excited to talk to you about this project. And I can imagine it's hard for you probably to unwind after working on it for quite some time. I think my first question is, Ruby and Jodi both have enormous influence in their respective communities. How did you first encounter this story, and what about it compelled you to pursue a documentary?
Even before it hit the news that Ruby had been arrested, we we're super keen to kind of find a story within the family vlogger space. And, it's a very complicated conversation. And it's really like the Wild West out there in terms of, it just being so unregulated. So we were really keen to kind of dive into that world. And then it hit the news that Ruby had been arrested. And so then we didn't switch gears, but we were kind of like, okay, who is Ruby? Who is Jodi? And that's what kind of kicked us off.
Yeah. And I think also coming off of our last series, Shiny Happy People, we saw how easily kids can be exploited, especially, when family, faith, and the media collide in this kind of perfect storm. And with Ruby and Jodi, we kind of saw this happening again, but within a new media platform that seemed to amplify just as much harm. And again, just going back to like children's protection and rights and, the new media and social media is the Wild West, especially with YouTube. And I think we saw this as something that we needed to explore and see, what really was going on there.
Yeah, Jodi is an interesting character. And to your point, I think a lot of the focus has been on Ruby. So could you give me a little bit of insight into Jodi's background, her upbringing, her career as a therapist, and how that shaped the way that she operated?
There's been pieces about Ruby out there, and really our question then shifted to who is Jodi Hildebrandt? I think that we were keen to understand like what makes her tick, this idea that monsters are kind of created at the end of the day, and, what led her to what happened in this horrible crime. But to your question, she, from what we know about her, had as she describes, kind of more of a tumultuous upbringing. That, she says that she grew up in a family that didn't really know how to show love. And that really framed sort of like her understanding of the world. And, I'm not a psychologist. So I'm kind of, just speaking from what we've learned, but I think that she was driven to therapy probably to try to understand herself, perhaps. And so that's kind of just like very 30,000 foot view, sort of like her kind of family background.
In romantic history, what do we know about that?
So she was married, and, had some children. But, as we discover in the docuseries, that marriage ended. And she's, estranged from what we know, estranged from her children as well. And that's been for years.
It's your man, Nick Cannon, and I'm here to bring you my new podcast, Nick Cannon at Night. I've heard y'all been needing some advice in the love department. So who better to help than yours truly? Nah, I'm serious. Every week, I'm bringing out some of my celebrity friends and the best experts in the business to answer your most intimate relationship questions. Having problems with your man? We got you. Catching feelings for your sneaky link? Let's make sure it's the real deal first. Ready to bring toys into the bedroom? Let's talk about it. Consider this a non-judgment zone to ask your questions when it comes to sex and modern dating in relationships, friendships, situationships, and everything in between. It's gonna be sexy, freaky, messy, and you know what? You'll just have to watch the show. So don't be shy. Join the conversation and head over to YouTube to watch Nick Cannon at Night, or subscribe on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. Wanna watch episodes early and ad-free? Join Wondery Plus right now.
How hard is it to kill a planet? Maybe all it takes is a little drilling, some mining, and a whole lot of carbon pumped into the atmosphere. When you see what's left, it starts to look like a crime scene.
Are we really safe? Is our water safe? You destroyed our town.
And crimes like that, they don't just happen.
We call things accidents. There is no accident. This was 100% preventable.
They're the result of choices by people. Ruthless oil tycoons, corrupt politicians, even organized crime. These are the stories we need to be telling about our changing planet. Stories of scams, murders, and cover-ups that are about us and the things we're doing to either protect the Earth or destroy it. Follow Lawless Planet on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to new episodes of Lawless Planet early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Lauren, how did Jodi's professional training intersect with personal motivations? And then what role did that play in her influence over Ruby and others?
Yeah, well, I think, she grew up in a very patriarchal society, riddled with a lot of shame and guilt. And I think that she kind of utilized that as well in her therapy. That was something that she actually kind of commodified and used against her patients.
Did your exploration of Jodi's life give you any insight into why someone with her professional knowledge would engage in this kind of behavior?
Yeah, I think that she was dealing with a lot of demons. I think she had a lot of inner struggles, especially, like I said, within this patriarchal society. I don't think that she was able to potentially live out her actual desires and interests just because of all the pressure that she was under. And I think she kind of took that out on those that she was therapized. I think she wasn't really, she had her own struggles. And because she could not really deal with them, I think she put that on other people.
I remember when I read Sherry's book, she says that there's this one moment where her mom walks out of the bedroom that she was essentially staying in with Jodi for months. And they had robes on. And it's pretty clear that she at least saw them in a romantic capacity. What did you uncover as part of your research? Because as you keep noting, she does seem to have some personal demons, and she seems very guarded and angry.
Yeah, well, I think that, she definitely was guarded and angry. And when we actually interviewed their niece, Jodi Hildebrandt, I think that's when we kind of found her motive. Jodi is a queer individual, and Jodi really kind of took that out on her. She caused a lot of harm. And I think because, like I said, she could not really fulfill her actual desires, she was taking that out on everyone.
Can you describe the scope and the structure of her therapy practice? How did it operate? What kind of clientele did she target?
Yeah, well, I think predominantly her clientele was members of the, of the LDS church. And, she was brought up LDS. And so that was kind of her, sounds weird to say, like, target audience. But, there were folks who were not LDS who also went to see her. But she, in the Mormon church, when you go to your bishop and you have, struggles, marital struggles, whatever it is, then they can refer you out to therapy. So Jodi was on this referral list of LDS therapists that bishops would send clients to her. So that's kind of how she got a lot of her business. And her business kind of evolved over the years. Like, it turned, she went from kind of like working in these more like rehab sort of like facilities with working with people with addiction, to then kind of formulating her own sort of twisted ideas and ideology and her own, ideas, which became ConneXions. And I think, and Lauren kind of touched on this a little earlier, the thing that Jodi was really good at doing is finding out where people's vulnerabilities are, and then really digging in, which is, of course, just twisted.
Diabolical.
You go to a therapist for help, right? And obviously, we explore in the series that, what people received was quite the opposite.
Well, then she's also, saying that she gets messages from God. So not only are you finding someone's Achilles heel and manipulating them that way, and then you're holding the very thing that is most sacred to them and using as some sort of manipulation tactic.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think beyond that, something that we explored in the series as well is, this sort of purity culture in the Mormon church. And Jodi would weaponize that shame and really, really dig in with people. And that's how she kept people coming back and writing those checks, was digging into that already sort of like bedrock of shame that existed within the Mormon church, and then exploiting that.
Did you have any challenges in convincing former followers or family members to speak on camera? And I wondered, particularly those that have been part of the church, was it hard for them to come forward?
I think that people at first, just because, they did experience so much trauma and this was such a vulnerable time in their lives, it was challenging just to open up and speak about it. But, I think at the end of the day, they did realize that even if not for themselves, there would be healing on a widespread mainstream level. And I think that really was their driving force in talking to us. There was some hesitancy with some members of the LDS church, but at the end of the day, this is not necessarily it's not a story about the Mormon church. It's a story about Jodi and Ruby and how Jodi really just weaponized certain practices of the church, not necessarily the church itself.
Yeah. Some of the pictures are pretty difficult to see. I wondered if it was difficult to get access to any of that. And then I thought about you and your team and how some of you probably have children of your own. How hard is that to compartmentalize with a project like this?
Yeah, and this is something interesting to talk about as a filmmaker, I think, because, obviously I want to say I'm not a victim of Jodi Hildebrandt. I'm not a victim of Ruby Franke, right? I don't hold that sort of trauma and experience. But I think at the same time, we're all human beings,
Yeah.
This project, and it messes with your mind, for sure. And you also want to go about it in a way where you're not, there are a lot of images out there that we did not use, and I think that was another thing, like, as filmmakers, how do we tell this story ethically and not, in this like flashy sort of like exploitative manner, but also telling the truth. So yeah, it was a very, very kind of hard line. And of course, that just the content is horrific. So it does do a number on your psyche.
Mm-hmm. But it's important though, because the story, as I mentioned, it's been discussed, but I think it's really hard to put into perspective unless you see duct tape on a child's body. And then that's what we're really talking about here, is someone who manipulated children at their most vulnerable place. And again, I just want to say thank you, because I know that you all go home and have your own lives, and this must be very difficult to do, but it's important work. So I just wanted to honor you.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
And then I wondered too that if you encountered any resistance from anybody in the pursuit of telling this story.
When you do a documentary, you want to represent as many sides of the story as you can, right? And I think in this story in particular, because we kind of, it's still about Ruby and her relationship with Jodi, but it's really about the families that Jodi Hildebrandt has affected over the years. Like, that's really where our focus went. And I think because of that, you're dealing with minors that are still coming of age. You're dealing with incredibly complex family dynamics and, decade-long divorces. And it's incredibly difficult. Like I said before, like we, would want to interview, everybody to get all sides of the story and all these things. But because of the complex family dynamics, some of the ex-wives of our participants chose not to speak, and that's a personal decision. You have to respect that. But of course, as a filmmaker, you always want all perspectives.
Yeah, because you're also probably battling that there are people that are carrying shame still. Yes. And the frustration always is the shame should be carried by the person that is the predator and not the victim.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do feel like a lot of the victims hold on to that shame and guilt, and they think that they are the ones in the wrong. So to your point, I do think we did encounter some people that probably have not processed this very understandably. And I think it was difficult for them to face that and open up. Healing is something that's obviously a very long process. So I think we definitely dealt with some people who were still very much so dealing with the trauma, and it was too difficult to face this right now, understandably.
So towards the end, you do hear conversations that they have had in jail. And it sounds like Ruby at some point is beginning to say things that make it seem as if she's recognizing the power that Jodi wielded over her. Do you think that is authentic, or that is just another part of her performance? She's been performing for years on YouTube.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and something that we have kind of gone back and forth on, right? There's no way to fully get inside that woman's head. I think that there is a level, and this is actually what, some of our participants' opinion as well, like there is a level of recognition there. But at the same time, there was a plea deal on the table, right? So,
right.
Are you working in your own self-interest, or do you actually recognize that what you did was wrong? I think it's kind of up to the audience. I'm curious what the audience thinks.
Yeah. Well, then I was also listening to what Jodi said, and, she's got this belief that she's there for a purpose, and it sounds very much like a cult leader. Do you think that there has been anybody in her orbit, anybody that still communicates with her, that has been able to crack her open at all? Or do you think that she's still just very certain of her own future and her vision?
I think she's very certain of her own future and vision. I don't think she's someone who you can crack. I think she believes that this is what is right. And, we spoke to some people who actually were in jail with both of them. And they did say that it seems like Jodi is still very much so going on with her practices and beliefs. And Ruby did seem a lot more reserved and unsettled by everything.
Mm. It's so disturbing, too, the way she uses scripture as a shield. Because if someone doesn't memorize the Bible, you could just say any sort of thing to make sense of her lunacy. It's very frustrating. I think my last question is, what are some of the patterns that you noticed in the relationship between Ruby and Jodi that were essential to the influence over others? And I ask that because I think as we walk away from the story, we want some sort of feeling that we're armed with information and resources that we can help one another if we see something that seems similar in scope to what happened in this case.
Yeah, I think some of their patterns were isolating people, disguising healing for things that were actually hurtful and harmful. Things that should be someone's choice and autonomy becoming full absolute control. There were definitely a lot of red flags and warning signs, but I think at the end of the day, like coercive manipulation it's so challenging, and it's so multi-layered that it's really difficult to even, when you're going through it to be aware.
Well, Ruby and Jodi, A Cult of Sin and Influence is a 4-part documentary set to debut September 1st on Investigation Discovery and HBO Max. Tell everybody where they can find you guys.
You can find us on Instagram at Chick Entertainment.
The amazing Kate Casey.
I want to thank my guests, Olivia and Lauren, and remind you to make sure that you click subscribe. Please leave a 5-star review. I would love for you to join the Facebook group Reality Life with Kate Casey. Also, make sure you check out my What to Watch list of what to watch in unscripted TV by going to katecasey.substack.com. Also, check out my bonus episodes on Apple Podcast and on Patreon. And lastly, make sure that you check me out on social media so you can find out about upcoming episodes by going to at KKCCA on Instagram, It's KKC on TikTok, and at KKC on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Threads. Check back tomorrow for an all-new episode.
Send summer out with a sizzle during the Omaha Steaks Labor Day sale. Save 50% site-wide on legendary steaks, juicy air-chilled chicken, beefy burgers, deli-style franks, and more. Plus, get an extra $35 off with code FALLFLAVOR when you shop omahasteaks.com today. Fall isn't just the unofficial end of summer. It's the beginning of fall grilling season. From Labor Day cookouts to game day greatness, Omaha Steaks delivers the kind of fall flavor that brings people together. USDA-certified tender steaks, legendary burgers, amazing appetizers, and cozy comfort meals for those busy weeknights. And every bite is backed by their 100% satisfaction guarantee. Shop now to save 50% site-wide on steaks and more during the Labor Day sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get an extra $35 off with code FALLFLAVOR at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, code FALLFLAVOR. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details.